Hello, I'm old Mr. Kent. I'm on my morning e-trike ride, 82 years old, and I'm running out of ideas for stories, but I sat around and got to thinking, I can come up with one more anyway, and I'm running out of energy too, by the way. So this one is going to be called Changing Jobs, because I went through quite a few jobs in my lifetime, and I thought, well, there was some experiences I had changing jobs. So let's go to the very first job I got when I got out of college. I worked for Boeing, and it was an interesting story when I got the job at Boeing, but I'm not going to go there. So when it came time for me to quit, because when I was working at Boeing, I was hired as a draftsman. Yeah, I could make a whole story out of that. Maybe I'll do that, because I did it one other time, but it's been a while. Anyway, so I had taken descriptive jump. By the way, this was before CAD machines. This is when you did everything by hand. You drew by hand. And I had taken a course in college called descriptive geometry. And normally, back in those days, when you got a drawing, it had three views: top, side, and front. And so when I got into the as a draftsman, then I was able to get different views other than those three. But a lot of the engineers hadn't had the course I had, and so they had me teaching the engineers how to get a separate view from any angle you wanted, using descriptive geometry. And so I was teaching engineers how to do this, and I was just a lowly paid draftsman. Well, but I only worked for 8 months, and then I found a teaching job, which was what I was trained to do. And so I turned in my resignation, and then a couple days later, I got a note to go see the project manager for the 707. This was when they were making the 707. And so I got this note from my manager, and he says, "You got to go see this guy." Well, he was the head guy, the very top guy at the top of the pyramid. And so I went and found his office, and the secretary said, or whoever it is at the beginning there, I'm turning left here. And she said, "Go ahead, go on in." Well, he was sitting at this big long table this way, and he's in the middle. It's like for conferences. There were no chairs there, just his chair and one chair in the middle. So I went in. He says, "Have a seat." And I sat down. He says, "I understand you're going to quit." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, because I got a teaching job, and I was in college. I was trained to be a teacher." And he said, "Well, we don't want you to quit." And he tried to talk me into not quitting. He said, "We give you a raise if you stay around," and on and on. He basically begged me to stay. But I had already signed a contract to go to work as a teacher in Pasco, Washington. So anyway, that was an experience of changing jobs. And so they didn't want me to quit, and they basically begged me to stay, but I didn't. So then I went to work for Pasco High School as a industrial arts teacher, and I taught drafting and metal shop. And after 2 years, they told me I was going to teach electronics, and I knew nothing about electronics. But I went to summer school, learned about electronics, and I fell in love with electronics. So over the next several years, I fell so much in love with electronics. I got all the licenses you needed to be ham radio operator, commercial radio operator, television station operator. I had all the top licenses you could get because I loved it so much. So I was working part-time at television station, and just I worked there for 12 years at the high school. And my wife and I, one Sunday morning, we were listening. We decided to listen to to a preacher on the radio, and so we liked that. We liked the preaching. So the next Sunday we went out. Well, that radio station had their own. They had their own radio station, and they found out that they needed a chief engineer for their radio station. So so I worked as their chief engineer, and eventually the pastor asked me to go to work there. And then you've heard the story how I was the chief engineer at the Christian radio station there at that church. And so I worked there for 15 years. And it was, I really enjoyed that because I liked electronics, and it was probably, well, I would say that was probably the most enjoyable job that I ever had. So I'm working there 15 years, and I won't go into all the details, but because I was like in management for the radio station and other parts of the church, I figured out that the pastor was using money incorrectly. I'll just put it that way. He was not using what you'll call the Lord's money for the Lord's work. He was using it for whatever he felt like using it for. So I confronted him about it. Well, then he told me, first of all, he used a bunch of foul language. Told me I needed to find a different job. He didn't fire me. He just said I needed to find a different job. Well, I didn't go out and start looking for a different job because I was happy there, but I kept my eyes open for one anyway. Well, then it wasn't long, probably several months, and these people came to the church there, and they were starting a boys' boarding school about 40 miles north of where the church was located. And I got to know them really well. They invited me to come to work for them. And so when I told the pastor I was going to go to work for them, man, he was mad. Oh, well, he didn't blow up and everything, but then he well, I'm not going to go into detail, but he was like, now he hated me for quitting. Told me I needed to find a job, and then hated me for quitting. It's kind of funny how that goes, but I won't go into detail. So I went to work for this boarding school, and the problem is, after 3 years there, they were doing things so illegally, and it was a Christian boarding school. They were doing things so illegally that the county told them they were going to close them down. And so I'm not going to go to dates, but anyway, in springtime, they found out they were going to get closed down by the end of the year. And so they made up their mind that they were going to move to Missouri. They found a place in Missouri where they could move their boarding school to, what boys they had and stuff. And so, but I didn't want to move to Missouri because I still had property there in Washington, in Pasco, Washington, and that's where I had other family members living there, and I didn't want to go there. And so in April of whatever year that was, I think that was 1995, I guess. Anyway, in April, I'm over 50 now. Okay, if you ever been over 50 looking for a job, it's not a snap. And so I started sending out resumes to find a job, and I took the Sunday paper, I guess it was. I'd go down the list and I'd send out resumes. And so I sent resumes out all summer, April, May, June, July, August. I'll say into September, but anyway, April, May, June, July. I sent out. Oh, and by the way, you probably have already recognized the fact that I'm a Christian, and I spent And I've always, for years, I've spent every morning I get up and I spend time reading my Bible and praying. And so every morning I would get up and read my Bible and I'd pray and I'd ask the Lord, I'd say, please help me to find another job because I don't want to move to Missouri. Those were basically the words I'd say. I don't want to move to Missouri. And so, I beg and beg and beg. And so I'd send out resumes. So from the time, let's see, that would be, let me think. So from that time, I sent out 47 resumes from April till August and didn't get any. I mean, I got answers. No, we're not hiring, or no, we don't need you, or whatever. But I didn't get very many answers. I just got no reply at all. And I kept getting up and praying and begging, saying I do not want to move to Missouri. Because I always gave the Lord good reasons why I didn't want to move to Missouri. And so 47 resumes, April, May, June, July, August. And somewhere along the end of August or at the beginning of September, it wasn't looking good. 47 resumes, no results. And so one morning, you won't believe this. I mean, you really won't believe this. One morning, I got up and I thought, it just isn't looking good. So, open up my Bible, read my Bible, close the Bible, and start praying. And I said something like this. I don't remember exact words, but I said, okay, Lord, if you want me to go to Missouri, I'll go to Missouri. Amen. So I get out, we're getting breakfast and all that kind of stuff. I get 2 phone calls that morning, 2 phone calls for job interviews. I guess you would call that a miracle, or just a change in heart, or a lesson in learning. But anyway, so needless to say, I got a different job. I went to both interviews, but this was in the boarding school, like I say, was 40 miles north of Pasco, Washington, which was in Othello. And the job that I ended up getting was all the way up further north in Spokane, Washington. So I went to work at a computer school, teaching computers in Spokane, Washington. And you've probably heard the story, if you've been following my channel, how after I'd been working for about a week, the owner asked me if I would take on a second class because the students and that teacher weren't getting along fine, or getting along at all. And so I took on that second class. Okay, so I'm trying to remember how long I worked there. I think I worked there 5 years. Anyway, the owner had this policy, whereas if you were going to quit, you had to give them 6 weeks notice. And so there was an opening to go to do tech support for Microsoft, and I had to take an exam, make sure I knew about computers. And so I took the exam and I passed it. And I had watched as somebody gave, if somebody gave him their 6 week notice, then life for them for the next 6 weeks was like some people would say, was hell, you know. He would just treat them like they were trash because now they're quitting him, you know, they're leaving him. And that's how he was to people when they give him their 6 weeks. For the next 6 weeks, going to work was miserable. And so I thought, because, you know, now I could change jobs. But I thought, 6 weeks? I don't want to put up with 6 weeks of misery. So I gave him 2 weeks of notice. And well, he was mad, but he was only mad for 2 weeks. And I never told him, you know, I never told him why I only gave him 2 weeks. But he didn't give me 2 weeks notice. He wanted me to take on 2 classes when I started working there. So I thought it was kind of fair. So I gave him 2 weeks notice. And I went to work for Microsoft. And it was fun. I really enjoyed working for Microsoft. And it was a perfect job for me because I like to get up early in the morning. And my hours were from 5 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I had all the rest of the day to myself to do what I wanted. The only problem with that schedule was they didn't give you 2 days off in a row. You might have Sunday and Tuesday off, or Sunday and Wednesday off, or something like that. And that was not a pleasant job in that respect. But the worst thing for me, the worst thing about it was they put you in a booth in a room full of 1,000 people. And so if you stood up, the guy wants to turn. So if you stood up and looked over the top of your booth, you could see if anybody else in the room was standing up in their booth. So you sat in that booth. Of course, you get lunch off and you got, 10-minute break now and then. But you sat in that booth for 8 hours a day. And so I worked there for 3 months. And finally, I started getting stomach cramps. I started getting problems with my body. Oops, there comes those little dogs. Came too far down the road. So maybe they're through now. Anyway, I came down too far because those dogs lived there. So anyway, one day I went in and I liked the job, and it was fun talking to people on the phone and laughing with them and stuff, but I just couldn't handle being in that little booth 8 hours a day. So I walked in and I told my boss, I said, I can't do it anymore. He said, I understand. I know exactly what you're talking about. It happens a lot. We woke up all the dogs in the neighborhood. So anyway, so that's how I changed that job. I quit there. And so now I didn't have a job, and I wanted to have a job. And all my jobs up to that point were more or less professional. You had to have some kind of a college education, and many of the jobs I was like management. The radio station, I was manager over 20 people. They were all volunteers, but they had to be managed. And I mean, I was used to being in a educated environment. And I just didn't know what to do, but somebody said, well, you go to work at Walmart. Yeah, Walmart. Anybody can work at Walmart. But finally I decided, well, I'll give it a try. So I lowered myself, as I say, I lowered myself to go get a job at Walmart. And I remember I went in, sat down, or filled out the application, and then I don't remember how it went, but the day I had my interview, I sat down. The guy that interviewed me was on one side of the table, I was on the other side of the table, and I remember he laid down this manila envelope, and I just happened to glance and see that on the envelope there was a note that said very good references. So that made me feel pretty good. And so they put me in the hardware department, and I had a couple of people that I worked with that were just really great people. And then I had in mix and paint, I'd be mixing paint and visiting with people. And believe it or not, Walmart turned out to be one of the very most enjoyable jobs I ever had. And it wasn't the bottom of the line, it was just a different kind of environment, and I loved it, and worked there for 4 years. And then finally I had my website going, making extra money, and I really didn't need to go to work in the morning. And so in 2004, I think it was 2004, I finally decided I really don't need to get up and go to work, because I was making considerable money off the internet. So anyway, that's when I changed jobs for the last time, and that's my story. So like I said, I'm excuse me, I'm running out of thoughts and running out of ideas and running out of energy. But if I come up with anything, I'll make another video, but they're going to be a little more time between each one. So don't think I'm dead, because I'm not dead yet. But I want to thank you for watching this video, and God bless.